What's going on YouTube? Kamikazevondoom here with another Division 2 video. So sit back, relax, grab that popcorn, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. But all of the information within this video is already out on my Twitter page. So remember, at Kamikazevondoom on Twitter, you will get all of this information when it goes live from either the developer, other content creators, or myself. So if you want all of this news as soon as it happens, jump on my Twitter and you'll get it as soon as it happens, and you don't have to wait for one of these videos. Now, you can see we're about to hit 4,400 followers, so thank you guys so much for the ongoing support. On YouTube, we are just about to hit 14 million views, and we are making our way to 56,000 subscribers. So again, thank you so much for the support. Now, all of this is going to be about the developers within the Division 2. Now, we all know that I cover the Division game always, and my Twitter, just like this channel, is dedicated to the Division universe. And I stumbled across this over the weekend. I believe it was, what was it, Friday, maybe? So at the Division game, this is the official Twitter page for the Division universe. They posted this retweet from Massive Entertainment. Now, Massive Entertainment is the lead studio for the Division 2. They were also the lead studio for the Division. They are the lead studio for the Division universe as we know it right now, because Heartland and Resurgence is not out yet. So right now, Massive still runs the show. But they released this on October 13th. So this was, 5 days ago. It says how to create a believable video game world. In this episode of Behind Massive Screens, we discuss storytelling in video games from an art perspective from Tom Clancy's The Division 2 art producer, Palle Hoffstein. All right. Now, we all know Palle Hoffstein. This has been a developer that I have sourced and referenced in many videos. He has been one of the most outspoken developers for the Division 2 as of late, as of, the last year or so. And besides Yannick, he seems to be the other go-to developer for, news. So it's Yannick, Palle, Morton, Daria, Lucipus, and a couple others. But he is definitely on that list. He is the art producer at Massive for the Division 2. So he is featured in this podcast episode about his perspective in the Division 2 and a little behind the scenes look. Okay. So we go to their tweet, and it just shows a little snippet. This is 53 minutes. But if you actually click on the link, it's an entire episode. It's about 50-something minutes long. But what I'm going to do at the end of this video is I'll show you a snippet. That way, if you are interested after watching that, the link will be in the description below, and then you can click on that and watch the entire episode. But even just the first few minutes, it'll, grab you, and you'll want to watch the entire thing. Now, that leads me to the topic of this video. I'm sorry that I had to do that much context to explain to you what I'm about to say. Okay. We need more developers like this, okay? Massive, I really hope you're listening. Ubisoft, I don't care. Someone in this developer industry needs to understand we need more developers like this. And it started right here at the very tip top with Yannick. I know that, he's not the tip top. He's not, one of the big guys at Ubisoft. But as far as this game is concerned, he's the creative director. That's a pretty damn big title. That's a big title to have. And remember that when this game very first started, this was under, the wings of Julian Garrity. Now, he has since moved on to the Star Wars project that they are doing with, Lucasfilm and Disney, and the torch was passed on to Yannick. Now, in the past, we found out, that Yannick, we were all there witness from State of the Game, that he started as a community developer and worked his way up. He worked his way up to associate creative director and then finally creative director. So that's a huge thing, and he's done several interviews, and hopefully I can talk to him one day more in depth. And he has a very interesting story about how he is dedicated to this franchise, how it means a lot to him. He's a big fan, and he wants to see it, have that great development and blossom into what we all want it to be. And because of that, he was also saying in these interviews that, as a lot of people at, Massive Entertainment were going off to that Avatar video game and to Star Wars and all these bigger titles, he opted to stay with the Division 2 and work on, this new content. And he's a prime example of developers we want working on this game because he's dedicated, he's a fan of it, he wants what we want. Remember way back when the Resident Evil crossover event was happening and then it ended up not happening, and he had to go on State of the Game and tell us that it was canceled and replaced with a apparel event. And you could see, the disgust and the failure whenever he was saying it. I mean, this guy cares about the video game. Now, let's fast forward to Palle, because Yannick's been here for a while. He was there way back when Division 1, and we were seeing him in State of the Game quite frequently. Now, as far as Palle, this is a different story. So he was hired on later on. This is a part of the new developers that came over to Massive to work on the Division 2 for both Year 4 and Year 5. Now, he is the art producer, so all of the new apparel events that we're getting, the gear, the weapon skins, the weapons, things like that, it all goes through him being the art producer. So he has a big hand in all of the new stuff we're getting because it goes through him. I mean, in all of these new seasons, what are we getting? We're getting new gear, weapons, apparel, skins, what have you. And it all goes through Palle. So I'm telling you, watch this podcast or interview or whatever you want to call it with him, and you will be convinced that we need more developers like him. I'm not saying that the developers we have currently are not good enough. That's not what I'm saying at all. I am saying that if you are looking at, role models of developers and backgrounds that you want for this dev team, look at Yannick. That's a prime example. And Palle. That's a prime example. They are both fans of the franchise. They both want to be there. They both want to work on the game. They are passionate about it. They want to be there. It's not like, oh, this is just a stepping stone. Let's move on to another game, what have you. Oh, Star Wars. All right, I'm out. Peace. Oh, Avatar. All right, I'm out. Peace. No, they want to work on this franchise. So these are the developers that we want working for this game. So, I mean, if Massive, Ubisoft, whoever's listening, take them as pure examples as the leadership you want, and then have them pick the other developers that will be working, with them and underneath them. You know what I mean? Through the chain of command. Because you want developers like this at the top. That way, all the developers that they are, managing or supervising, what have you, teaching even, that they're in good hands. And that's what we need. All right? Because when we know they are upset, we know it's for a reason. We know when they're happy, it's for a reason. And that's why whenever these developers in particular talk on social media, we listen as a community because we know they are a part of our community. They're not, a part of the dev, only part. They are actually a part of us. They play the game. Yannick jumped on the PTS with us for season 9. I mean, these are developers that care for the game. So that's it. I just wanted to say that and then show you the snippet. So enjoy the video. Hit that like, subscribe. You know the whole deal. I am Kamikazevondoom, and I will see you guys in the next one. And then don't forget, join me on Twitter at Kamikazevondoom. And take care, everyone. Have a good day. And enjoy this snippet of behind the screens of Massive Entertainment featuring Palle Hoffstein, the art producer of The Division 2. Enjoy.
We're not the most interesting people in this room, believe it or not. It's Palle. Welcome, Palle Hoffstein, art director. Art producer. Couldn't even get that right. I'm really bad at titles. Art producer on The Division 2. Welcome, Palle.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm actually going to start completely non-game related, really. Your name, Palle.
Yes.
It's really Swedish.
Yes.
Why?
Well, so I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
Right.
However, my mother is from Sweden. My grandfather is actually from Malmo. And on both sides of my parents' family, people are variously from Sweden and Denmark.
Right.
So I had a connection to this region long before I got here, and grew up in a household where people spoke Swedish and Danish and were very Scandinavian, and fika was very important.
Fika is always important. Yeah.
You know, but interestingly, I was the only one in my household and among all the relatives that was born in Canada, and I'm the only one that's here now.
Right. How did that feel then, coming to Malmo with your grandfather from here?
It was really interesting. Like I was going to go to Copenhagen. I thought I'll go over to Malmo because it's where my grandfather's from. I was really curious, and I really fell in love with the city.
Yeah.
And I felt very at home here in a way that I'm not used to when I'm traveling. I mean, I love going everywhere. I love traveling, but I guess maybe just being raised in a household of people from this region, that everything here just felt incredibly normal to me in a way that I'm not used to. I'm in a country I've never been in before.
Right.
So that was fun. And, and after a couple of visits, I mean, I'd been with Ubisoft for a while in a different studio in Germany, in Mainz. I thought, well, there is a studio in Malmo, Ubisoft studio. They're working on a franchise I'm a fan of.
Right.
So maybe I can find some way to negotiate working up in Malmo.
Right. Yeah, relatively speaking, I mean, Malmo is it's a large city in Sweden terms, or in the Swedish context, but in the world, it's really small.
It's tiny compared to Vancouver. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How many people live in Vancouver?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard because
more than Malmo.
Yeah. I mean, it's a city surrounded by lots of other cities that is ultimately one big city. But they all count their population separately. So I don't know, but it's probably, I guess, around 3-4 million people in the area.
Yeah, that's quite the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how did you end up in... this is quite a long story, I know, which is awesome. But let's just start out with how you ended up in the industry, because your entire journey now, so far, in the industry has led you here to Massive and to Malmo, where we started this entire conversation. But where did it start?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of an unusual entry into the industry in that I never planned to be in it, and I didn't get into it until I was about 30 years old.
Right.
Despite the fact that, as a teenager, I played games religiously, and on my Commodore 64 and my Amiga, and hacked them to pieces to learn how games were made, how games worked. And yet it never occurred to me that this could be something I would do for a living.
Right.
And, I spent a lot of my 20s bouncing around the film industry. And the film industry is fun as hell. Like the game industry, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of long hours, and there's a lot of craziness. But it was enjoyable. But I could not get meaningful work. I was doing what they call production assistant work, which is low-paying, bottom of the ladder kind of stuff.
Yeah, the competition must be insane.
Yeah. And I thought, if I'm going to do anything meaningful in the industry, I'm going to need to get a bit of an education. So I took a teaching gig for a while because it paid well, and went to a place called Vancouver Film School, which is now also known for its gaming program, but at the time it was just film. And, I studied film and directing and writing and editing, and, I was going to be the next Ridley Scott and take on Hollywood and make awesome science fiction movies and so forth. But obviously, that's not quite what happened. Other than making a couple, short indie films. A friend of mine who worked briefly in the game industry started his own game company called Mad Genius Software. He found a couple guys that were building their own game engine. This was in the days of Duke Nukem and Doom, so 3D engines were pretty simple. And these guys had one that could do things that no one else's engine could do at that time, with animated textures and big outdoor spaces. So what they were doing was pretty cool. And I'd been making Doom WADs. I'd been playing around with, just making my own maps in Doom. And so I kind of bugged these guys, like, can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? They got an office, they got some money. And so they brought me in. They didn't know what to do with me. They thought, well, he's a filmmaker. He can help with cutscenes. They weren't even remotely ready for cutscenes because they were just starting out the game. So I started playing around with their level editor, and I started making levels, started making maps. And I was good at it. And so they let me continue doing that. And this was in an era where you could make a first-person shooter, which is what we made, with 20 people. I mean, how many people were on Division 2 at peak? 1,000, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. There was 20 of us, and we made this game. And you had to wear a lot of hats. So I was the level designer, and I also made textures, and I did some scripting, and I answered the phone, and I went to conferences and handed out T-shirts at E3. Like, you just do everything, right?
Sure.
And so we made this game, and we worked our asses off and did some crazy hours. And after 2 years, we put it out there, and were absolutely destroyed by a game you may have heard of called Quake that came out just before us. And we went bankrupt, and that was the end of us. And I thought, well, that's the end of my adventure in the video game industry. Time to get back to filmmaking.
Right.
But an artist that I worked with there, he got a job with sort of a veteran game company called Backbone Entertainment. I think they were called Digital Eclipse at the time. And they were working on Spyro the Dragon games for Game Boy and stuff. And they needed a level designer. And so this guy recommended me. And so I went over for an interview, and the guy didn't want to interview me. He asked me about, Commodore 64 games. And then he said, let's go drink tequila. He was really into like fancy tequilas. He's like, I can taste the difference between like a $20 tequila and a $30 tequila. Can you? He was really interested in if I could do this.
It's a very valid interview question.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I guess I did well, because at the end of the night, he was like, can you start tomorrow? It was a bit of a different era. I mean, this was a long time ago.
It sounds very much like how I thought of the video game industry back in the day.
That was how it worked for you, right?
Yeah.
Just a couple of months ago, drinking tequila in a bar.
But I also got a job in Denmark, so it was beer.
That's
well, I mean, Canada, known for its tequila. The thing is, I mean, I've been in the game industry ever since.
Right.
So I guess the film industry thing didn't actually work out, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You can always go back to the film industry. Don't leave us.
Yeah.
Let's not go down that path.
I could, but it kind of occurred to me after a while that I just like storytelling, and I like visual storytelling. I mean, I could have ended up in games or film or comic books.
Right.
And I think I would have been equally happy in any of these things, because they touch on the things that I enjoy doing.
Yeah. And I think that's quite interesting. Like, I come from the film industry myself, hence why I'm still filming and editing. But there's one difference between, like you mentioned, there are comic books and films and games. Games is the only one that's interactive, where the person consuming the entertainment is also the person creating it at the same time.
Absolutely.
So the extra effort as a creator, creating the media, of giving the freedom or giving them the perspective to actually be able to create their own entertainment, that must add like a whole new dimension.
Absolutely, because we're working as storytellers, enabling other people to become their own storytellers. And those are the kind of games I really like working on. I don't like working on heavily scripted games. I like games where the players can run around and kind of figure out what they want to do and how they want to do it. So I'm really happy to be working on a big open world title that gives players a lot of freedom, because they're basically able to tell their own stories to themselves in a way that is comfortable for them.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, another part of that is also the layer of storytelling that is told through the environment. Like in film, of course, with sets and stuff, you add in a feeling of this place. But in games, it's often something hidden off to the side where you find it, and then you kind of imagining the story of how everything got to.
Yeah, and I absolutely love this stuff. I mean, one of the things I really like about my current title, Division 2, is the level of detail of world building that we do. It's fun. It is layers of storytelling. So while, the game has, okay, here's the story, you need to go from here to here and do this thing. If you stop and look around, you will see all of these events that happened, or that you can kind of figure out what probably happened here based on things like, just scarring in the world, or graffiti, or, trash, or just, blood, whatever it is that we put in the world. And, and we do this on the objects, we do it on the clothing. Pretty much everything we put in the world has a story, and I cannot stand it when I see a game and everything looks like it's brand new, that it came off the assembly line, because nothing in the real world looks that way. And, and we spend a lot of time thinking about how worn should this be, how torn up should it be, how dirty should it be, for everything we put into the game. Because again, that is another layer of storytelling, and it's a kind of storytelling that I really love doing. And I know for some players, they're just going to run around and they'll just, not focus on that. But I know there's some that stop and, zoom in and check out the details. And I love making content for those players.
Yeah, and even the ones that are not paying attention to it subliminally, they will get an extra
absolutely
feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I